Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today we're diving into patterns.
Patterns.
Yeah, and you've sent us some really interesting stuff on this articles, research, even like personal notes.
Oh, wow.
I'm really curious to see what we can uncover together about patterns.
Well, patterns are everywhere, right? If you know how to look.
Right.
I mean, from the natural world to human behavior, philosophy, even just our daily routines like we were talking about before the show.
Yeah, it's almost like a secret code underlying like all of reality.
Yeah, like a hidden language.
So where do we even begin with all this?
Well, you mentioned these spirals.
Yeah.
Let's start there, the ones in sunflowers.
Okay.
Those seeds aren't just arranged that way for aesthetics.
Right.
It's actually about efficiency, like your sources were saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's about packing in the most seeds in a limited space.
Hmm. That's pretty amazing.
It is.
Nature's like figured out the most efficient way to like pack those seeds in.
Nature has had a lot of time to practice.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But what about the benefits for us? I read something about how observing these kinds of patterns can actually reduce stress.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Really?
Like research has shown that just looking at fractals, those repeating patterns you find in nature, can reduce your stress level by up to like 60%.
Oh, wow.
It's like our brains are hardwired to find them calming, So like you might find looking at nature more calming than you realized.
Right.
Your brain is literally wired for it.
Wow, I never knew that.
It's true.
So there's like actual science behind our attraction to these natural patterns.
Absolutely.
All right.
Like way back, early pioneers like Darcy Thompson, he explored like the mathematical principles behind these patterns in his book on growth and form.
Right.
And Alan Turing, you've probably heard of him,
Oh, yeah.
famously cracked the Enigma code.
Right.
Well, he also did groundbreaking work on how patterns emerge in nature,
Oh, wow.
specifically like those reaction diffusion models that explain like things like animal markings. It's actually relevant to your work.
Really?
Yeah, because those patterns in nature he studied are also at play in how AI is developing today.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating.
It is.
It's amazing how these early scientists were already like unraveling the mysteries behind patterns.
Yeah, they were really ahead of their time.
Yeah.
And it extends beyond just like shapes and forms.
Okay.
Like camouflage, for instance.
Right.
That's totally a pattern-based survival strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where animals like blend seamlessly with their environment.
Right, like a chameleon changing its color to match its surroundings.
Exactly.
Okay.
But, camouflage isn't just about blending in.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay.
It can also be about standing out.
Oh,
Like think about the vibrant colors and patterns on flowers.
right.
They're actually designed to attract pollinators, like bees and butterflies.
Okay.
It's a beautiful example of how patterns facilitate interactions in nature.
So from attracting mates to avoiding predators, patterns play a crucial role in the natural world.
Like a visual language.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So those same pattern-seeking abilities that we were talking about in nature are like hardwired into our brains.
Absolutely.
So that's how we make sense of the world, how we learn, and how we make decisions.
Our brains are constantly looking for those connections,
Right.
trying to find the signal in the noise.
Exactly. Our brains are constantly looking for connections, trying to like find order in the chaos.
Exactly.
Mm.
It goes back to survival.
Okay.
Think about like our ancestors.
Yeah.
They had to be able to recognize patterns to survive.
Right.
I mean, like identifying animal tracks for hunting,
Right.
predicting the weather,
Yeah.
These were essential skills.
So our brains evolved to be these incredible pattern recognition machines.
We are pattern-seeking creatures at our core.
But how does that play out in our lives today?
Well, look at your daily routine.
Okay.
Waking up,
Right.
having coffee,
Uh-huh.
going to work.
Yeah.
These are all patterns,
Huh.
and they provide like structure and predictability to our lives.
I used to think routines were boring
Uh-huh.
until I realized my morning coffee ritual is basically like a sacred pattern that keeps me sane.
It is. There's a reason for that.
It's like my brain needs that familiar sequence to start the day off, right?
That's not just you.
Really?
Those routines actually reduce stress
Oh.
by minimizing decision fatigue.
Okay.
Our brains love patterns because they simplify things.
So those seemingly mundane routines are actually helping our brains function more efficiently.
Precisely.
Ah.
It's about conserving energy.
Okay.
And those patterns, they extend beyond our personal lives.
Okay.
Think about the way we interact with each other.
Uh-huh.
Our social behaviors are also governed by patterns.
So there are patterns in how we communicate, how we build relationships, even how we resolve conflicts.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Sociologists have actually identified 5 basic patterns of social interaction:
Okay, what are they?
exchange, cooperation, competition, conflict, and accommodation.
Those sound kind of abstract.
Yep.
Can you give me like some real-world examples?
Sure, think about exchange.
Okay.
It's like buying a cup of coffee.
Okay.
You give money, you get coffee.
Right.
Cooperation is more like working on a project together,
Okay.
where everyone's contributing to a common goal.
Right.
Competition is like a race.
Yeah.
Everyone's striving to win.
Right.
Conflict is, when those disagreements escalate
Yeah.
into like arguments or even physical altercations.
Mm.
And accommodation is like how we resolve those conflicts,
Okay.
finding a compromise or a way to coexist peacefully.
That's a helpful way to break it down. So
Yeah.
these 5 patterns are like constantly playing out in our social interactions.
Exactly. And the more we understand these patterns, the better we can navigate like our social world.
It's like having a roadmap for understanding human behavior.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But are these patterns always predictable?
Well, that's where things get interesting.
Oh.
While we can identify these general patterns, human behavior is complex.
Right.
There are always individual variations and unpredictable factors at play.
Right. So it's not like we can perfectly predict how someone will react in every situation.
No, but understanding these patterns can give us like insights into the underlying motivations and dynamics driving those social interactions.
That's still incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
It's like having a deeper understanding of the human operating system.
Right.
Wow.
And that understanding can be applied in countless ways.
Okay.
I mean, from improving our communication skills
Okay.
to building stronger relationships
Uh-huh.
to even resolving conflicts more effectively.
It sounds like recognizing these social patterns is a crucial part of emotional intelligence.
Absolutely.
Huh.
The ability to recognize patterns in your own emotions and the emotions of others,
Right.
that's a key component of EQ.
This is all pretty mind-blowing.
It is, isn't it?
We've gone from sunflowers to social dynamics, and it all comes back to patterns.
It's all connected.
It is. It is.
And we're just scratching the surface here.
Really?
Yeah, let's delve into how philosophers have grappled with the concept of patterns throughout history.
Okay.
It adds a whole other layer of depth to this exploration.
Okay.
What do you think?
I'm ready to dive in. I'm curious to see how philosophy can, shed light on this whole pattern phenomenon. Let's explore that next.
Okay, let's do it.
So we've talked about patterns in nature and human behavior, but I'm curious, what do philosophers have to say about all this?
Well, philosophers have been pondering the nature of patterns for centuries. Like some view patterns as evidence of a deeper order,
Yeah.
a cosmic blueprint underlying reality.
Grand design to the universe.
Exactly. Like they see the intricate patterns in nature, the laws of physics,
Right.
even the structure of human thought as pointing to like a higher intelligence
Oh, okay.
or a fundamental principle that's guiding everything.
That's a pretty profound idea.
It is.
But not all philosophers agree on that, right?
Right. Others see patterns as like emergent properties.
Okay.
They arise from the complex interactions within systems. So they might say that
Uh-huh.
those sunflower spirals are a natural consequence of like the physical forces acting on the seeds,
Okay.
not because of some predetermined plan.
So it's more about the interplay of different elements creating these patterns organically.
Exactly.
Okay.
Think of a snowflake.
Yeah.
Its intricate shape isn't planned out in advance.
Right.
But it emerges from the specific conditions of its formation.
I see. So are we talking about patterns as evidence of order versus patterns as a product of chaos?
That's one way to think about it.
Okay.
It's a fascinating debate that has implications for how we understand our own lives.
How so?
Well, think about the patterns in your own life, like your career path,
Right.
your relationships, your habits.
Mm.
Are they the result of a predetermined plan?
Oh.
Or have they emerged from the choices you've made and the circumstances you've encountered?
That's a deep question.
It is.
It makes you wonder how much control we really have over the patterns in our lives.
Exactly.
Mm.
And that's where the philosophical exploration gets really interesting.
Okay.
It's about examining the interplay of fate and free will,
Okay.
the influence of external forces, and our own agency in shaping the patterns that define us.
This reminds me of something you mentioned earlier about those unconscious habits that can hold us back.
Right.
Are those part of this pattern discussion too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Those habits are like ingrained patterns of thought and behavior.
Mm-hmm.
We might not even be aware of them.
Right.
but they can exert a powerful influence on our
But
lives.
becoming aware of those patterns is the first step towards breaking free.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about recognizing those patterns and then consciously choosing to change them.
Right.
It's not always easy, but it's a key part of personal growth.
And I imagine this ties back to those philosophical ideas about free will.
Mhm.
If we can recognize and change those patterns, it suggests we do have some agency in shaping our lives.
Precisely. It's about acknowledging those external forces
Right.
and those pre-existing patterns, but also recognizing our own power to disrupt them
Okay.
and create new patterns that better align with our values and aspirations.
It's empowering to think we have that ability,
It is.
but it also sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It is, but it's also incredibly liberating.
Okay.
Once we realize we're not just passive recipients of fate,
Right.
that we have the ability to consciously create the patterns we want in our lives.
I'm also reminded of like the spiritual perspective on patterns.
Uh-huh.
The source mentioned karma. How does that fit into this philosophical discussion?
That's a fascinating connection. Many spiritual traditions view karma as a kind of pattern-based system.
Okay.
The idea is that our actions create patterns of cause and effect, and those patterns then influence our future experiences.
So we're not just shaped by patterns, we're also creating them with every action we take.
Exactly. It's a reciprocal relationship. We're both influenced by existing patterns and contributing to the creation of new ones.
That adds a whole other dimension to the idea of personal responsibility.
It does.
If our actions create these ripple effects that shape our future experiences.
It's a profound concept that encourages us to be mindful of the patterns we're creating,
Right.
both for ourselves and for the world around us.
So whether you're looking at it from a philosophical or spiritual perspective, patterns seem to be deeply intertwined with the idea of human agency.
Exactly. They're not just abstract concepts.
Right.
They're forces that shape our lives in profound ways.
This is a lot to take in, but it's also incredibly fascinating.
I know.
It makes you want to examine your own life and see those patterns playing out.
That's the beauty of exploring this topic.
Right.
It invites us to look at the world with new eyes,
Yeah.
to see the connections and the recurring themes that might have gone unnoticed before.
I'm already starting to see the world differently. It's like I've unlocked a secret code, and now I can't help but see those patterns everywhere.
That's the power of awareness.
Mhm.
Once you start paying attention, you realize just how pervasive patterns really are.
But we've been talking about these big ideas for a while now. Let's bring this back down to earth a bit. How do these patterns manifest in our everyday lives?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's where the rubber meets the road, because patterns aren't just philosophical abstractions.
Right.
They're embedded in the fabric of our daily experience.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me some examples.
Okay, think about the layout of your keyboard.
Yeah.
The arrangement of keys follows a specific pattern designed for efficiency and ease of use.
That's true. I never really thought about it, but that pattern is so ingrained in my brain now that I can type without even looking.
Exactly. It's a pattern that's become second nature, and it's just one example of how patterns make our lives easier and more efficient.
What are some other examples?
Okay, think about the way traffic flows on a highway.
Okay.
The lanes, the signals, the rules of the roads, they all create patterns
Yeah.
that allow cars to move smoothly and safely.
It's true. Without those patterns, driving would be chaotic and dangerous.
Exactly. Patterns bring order and predictability to what would otherwise be a chaotic system.
And that order extends beyond just transportation.
Right.
I'm thinking about the design of websites and apps, the way information is organized, the buttons and menus. It's all about creating patterns that make those platforms intuitive and user-friendly.
You're absolutely right. Designers spend a lot of time thinking about patterns
Okay.
because they understand that creating clear and consistent patterns is key to a good user experience.
So patterns aren't just about making things work, they're also about making them enjoyable and easy to use.
Precisely. Patterns can enhance both functionality and aesthetics.
And what about those everyday routines we keep coming back to?
Yeah.
How are those patterns playing out in our lives?
Okay, think about your morning routine.
Uh-huh.
You wake up, you brush your teeth, you have coffee, you get dressed. It's a sequence of actions that you probably repeat every day.
It's true. It's almost automatic at this point.
And that's the point of a routine.
Okay.
It creates a sense of structure and predictability, which can be incredibly comforting and stress-reducing.
I know my morning coffee ritual is essential to my well-being, but sometimes I wonder if getting too stuck in those routines can stifle creativity.
That's a valid concern. It's all about finding that balance.
Right.
The structure of routines can be helpful, but it's also important to be open to new experiences and to break out of those patterns every now and then.
So how do we know when it's time to shake things up?
There's no hard and fast rule, but sometimes you just feel a sense of stagnation,
Okay.
like you're stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
That might be a sign that it's time to try something new.
It sounds like recognizing patterns is only part of the equation.
Wow.
Knowing when to break those patterns is equally important.
Exactly. It's about understanding the power of both order and disruption, and knowing when to embrace each.
This is all so fascinating, but I'm starting to wonder, what's the practical value of all this knowledge about patterns?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it leads us to the heart of why understanding patterns is so beneficial, because it's not just about intellectual curiosity.
Right.
It's about gaining a real advantage in life, ready to explore that.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the benefits. So we've talked about how patterns are like everywhere, from sunflowers to social dynamics, and we've touched on the philosophical, the spiritual implications, but now I'm really curious about like the practical side.
Okay.
How can understanding patterns actually benefit us in our daily lives?
That's where it gets really exciting.
Okay.
Because recognizing patterns isn't just about appreciating the beauty of nature.
Right.
Or understanding human behavior.
Right.
It's about gaining like a real advantage in life.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What kind of advantage are we talking about?
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
If you can spot patterns, you can start to predict trends. And that's a valuable skill in countless areas of life.
Like what?
Take the stock market, for example.
Okay.
If you can identify patterns in like market data,
Right.
you might be able to predict which stocks are likely to rise or fall.
Okay, that's a pretty high-stakes example, but I can see how understanding patterns could give you, like, an edge in investing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not just about finance.
Okay.
Think about your relationships.
Uh-huh.
If you can recognize patterns in your partner's behavior,
Yeah.
you might be able to anticipate their needs,
Okay.
avoid conflicts, and communicate more effectively.
So pattern recognition is like a relationship superpower.
You could say that it's about paying attention to those subtle cues
Right.
and understanding the underlying dynamics at play.
It sounds like this could apply to all sorts of relationships, not just romantic ones.
Absolutely.
Okay.
From understanding your boss's communication style to navigating family dynamics,
Uh-huh.
recognizing patterns can help you build stronger and more fulfilling relationships.
It's like having a secret decoder ring for human behavior.
Right, you're speaking their language.
That's cool, and it's not just about understanding others, it's also about understanding yourself.
Exactly, like we were talking about before.
Right.
Those unconscious habits and negative patterns that can hold us back.
Right, exactly.
Once you become aware of those patterns,
Yeah.
you can start to break free from them.
Okay.
It's like rewiring your brain for success.
That sounds like a powerful tool for personal growth.
It is.
And it all ties back to that emotional intelligence we discussed.
Right.
The ability to recognize patterns in your own emotions and the emotions of others is a key component of EQ.
It's all connected.
So we're talking about better self-awareness,
Yeah.
better relationships, better decision-making. This is starting to sound like a recipe for a happier, more successful life.
It's about taking control.
Wow.
And it all starts with paying attention, with becoming more mindful of the patterns that surround us.
It's amazing how something as simple as like observing patterns can have such profound implications.
It's the small things.
It really is. It really is. And we've only scratched the surface of what's possible.
It's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
But I do want to touch on one more aspect before we wrap up.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the benefits of recognizing patterns.
Right.
But sometimes breaking patterns is just as important.
Right. The source mentioned how disruption can lead to growth and innovation.
Exactly. Sometimes the best way to move forward is to shake things up,
Okay.
to challenge the status quo and embrace new ways of thinking and doing.
But isn't that contradictory to everything we've been talking about? I mean, we've been praising the power of patterns. Now you're saying we should break them.
Well, it's not about abandoning patterns altogether. It's about recognizing when they're no longer serving us, when they've become limiting or outdated.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between order and chaos.
Precisely.
Okay.
Think of it like a dance.
Yeah.
You need the basic steps to provide structure, but sometimes you need to improvise to break free and create something new.
I love that analogy.
It's about finding that flow.
Yeah. So how do we know when it's time to break the mold? When should we embrace that disagreeableness you mentioned earlier?
It's a gut feeling,
Okay.
a sense that things could be better,
Uh-huh.
that there's a different way of doing things.
Okay.
It might be a nagging feeling that your current routine isn't working,
Right.
or Like a spark of inspiration that leads you down a new path.
But that can be scary, right?
Yeah.
Like stepping outside our comfort zone, risking failure.
Of course. But remember, growth often happens on the other side of discomfort.
Right.
And like we discussed earlier, having a support system can make all the difference.
It's like having a safety net when you're trying something new.
Exactly. So don't be afraid to experiment, to challenge your assumptions,
right,
and to embrace the unknown.
This has been an incredible journey.
It has.
We've covered so much ground.
I know, right?
From sunflowers to spiritual growth to the power of disruption.
Lots of patterns.
Lots of patterns. I feel like I have like a whole new understanding of patterns and their significance.
That's what we hope for.
Yeah.
It's about seeing the world with new eyes.
I'm willing to bet you'll start seeing them everywhere now.
Yeah.
You're more attuned to them.
Patterns are everywhere.
They are.
You just have to know how to look.
I know. I will. It's like a whole new lens for viewing the world.
It is.
And remember, patterns are more than just abstract concepts.
Right.
They're tools that we can use to navigate our lives more effectively.
Right.
To make better decisions.
Yep.
To build stronger relationships, and to create a more fulfilling and meaningful existence.
That's the goal.
It is. So, to our amazing listeners,
yes,
keep those pattern-seeking eyes open. And don't be afraid to shake things up every now and then.
Who knows what amazing discoveries you might make.
Until next time.
See ya.
Happy pattern hunting.
And remember, stay curious.